I went into Wild Robot completely cold. I didn't know a thing about it, and I much preferred it in the first two thirds where it was the robot who's called Roz. We should add. Um, it it's sort of adapting to this island lifestyle, and that was quite. It was almost like an observational documentary at certain points.
And it's really rare when you anticipate something because your expectations go through the roof that you end up watching something and liking it more than you expected you would. For me, I think it was one of the best. I shouldn't say one of the. It was probably the best movie DreamWorks has ever done, animation movie. Beyond Shrek, beyond How to Train Your Dragon, because of the story and the time, and it had this, combination of E.T., Iron Giant, Bambi, and all those classics that, we grew up with.
It's that festival season.
Yes.
I did Venice, and as I mentioned, I'm doing San Sebastian, and then I think a brief trip to Zurich as well. So, and then the London Film Festival starts. After that, I can calm down. But were you in TIFF? Did you get to see much?
Too much. I haven't been to TIFF in 15 years. And this year I just kind of, I applied for through the podcast. I'm like, okay, let's see what happens because for me, always has been like networking for producing and directing films. So we applied a little too late and we got in. So I kind of hit two birds with one stone where I was watching the films, but I was also networking for my um, set of work that I do in terms of directing films. But it was really good because I ended up watching 19 films in 7 days or 6 days.
That's good going. That's good going.
Yeah, it was intense, but 90% of the films are really good. Few of them were not that, but
What was
that's just the way.
your highlight?
I was going to say Wild Robot, but then another film came in the way. Flow.
Right, I haven't seen that. That was in Cannes, and I remember
Yeah,
going, I really want to see that. And it's particularly because it's about 80 minutes long, I think, as well. And I was like, oh, I could squeeze that in, but never quite made it. But I know that it is showing in the London Film Festival, I think. So I will hope to get to see that.
I can't tell you how great it is, not because of how good it is, but what's great about it, which you probably already know, is that it's 84 minutes of no dialogue.
I'm not 100% sure. I have not read a lot about it. So I've seen a picture of a cat, which immediately made me go, I want to see this.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I guessed it was kind of minimal dialogue, but I didn't know for sure.
Yeah, no, it's breathtaking visuals, like unlike anything ever been done, I think, in animation, and the music is just out of this world. I mean, it just kind of hooked you on, and I really, I didn't know anything about this film going in because when I was waiting for the Wild Robot, in the line, this another guy I was talking to, we were talking about animation. He goes, "Have you seen Flow?" I'm like, "No, what's Flow?" So he told me to go watch it. And then I switched my movie tickets around and I started watching. I had no idea what it was about. I had not seen a single poster, zero. And 10 minutes in, I'm like, there's no dialogue, and I really hope it continues like this. And I was so pleased, and it was really well done. Amazing story on top of all that.
Well, pretty apt as well, given we are about to talk about Wild Robot, and there's not a great deal of dialogue in Wild Robot either. I mean, relatively speaking.
That's true. That's true. There isn't, but I mean, one thing about I'll let you talk about Wild Robot. I have my thoughts, but I would let you start to see what you have to say about it.
Well, a bit like you with Flow, I went into Wild Robot completely cold. I didn't know a thing about it. I think I was dimly aware that it was by Chris Sanders, who obviously back in the day invented Stitch of Lilo and Stitch fame,
Mm-hmm.
the little blue crazy alien from the Disney cartoon in about 2002, I think it was. And then went on to do, of course, How to Train Your Dragon and the Croods. And I kind of the one review I've written of Wild Robot, I think I said I do think Chris Sanders is probably one of the most underrated uh, animators and animation directors out there. I mean, when you consider the impact Stitch made as a character, I mean, I don't know about in Toronto, but I still see people in London wearing Stitch sweatshirts and carry Stitch dolls and things like that. And you think, yeah, that character made a real impact. Um, and this is kind of, I think, from what I've read, it's a sort of Miyazaki inspired um, animation. You first encounter the titular robot in its box, sort of basically abandoned on this kind of, or shipwrecked, let's say, on this kind of wild island, and it immediately starts sort of emulating the creatures around it to survive. A crab quite early on as it's sort of scaling up this cliff as kind of water cascades around it. And again, early on, like we were saying, there isn't a great deal of dialogue. Um, Before as a robot, it has to find a mission basically, and finds the mission in this little baby goose, basically, to sort of what is it? It's going to eat, sleep, and fly. Is that the phrase?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it basically has to tutor this little goose how to survive as a mother would. So of course, it's really a story about parenthood. Um, but there's a great deal more to it than that. I think it's tremendously animated. The kind of putting this kind of mechanical beast, let's say, in the wilds of this island, surrounded by nature, surrounded by winter at a certain point, and it has to sort of tutor these other creatures, not just the goose, how to survive, and I guess I guess you could say becomes a mother to all of them in some respects. Yeah, no, I mean, I was really taken with it. Less so, if I'm being honest, in the final third, where it gets a little bit sci-fi, a little bit actiony. I felt like they almost put that in because they needed to have a bit of action for the kids, as you often find in animations. There's always a chase scene or something, and here there's some sort of, lots of robots and blasters and things like that. And I much preferred it in the first two thirds, where it was the robot who's called Roz. We should add. It sort of adapting to this island lifestyle, and that was it was almost like an observational documentary at certain points, if you'd have had cameras watching a robot on an island, which would be strange. But yeah, I thought it was a kind of those first two thirds were really beautiful. I thought the score was really moving as well. That really helped, again, sort of taking over the need for too much dialogue, basically. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, no, to go back to what you said about Lilo and Stitch, it's true because I just saw my niece a few weeks ago who was born around that time wearing a Lilo and Stitch shirt. So yes, it has had amazing culture impact. Um, Wild Robot was when I didn't know anything about the film until I saw the trailer. I don't even know it was in production. Normally I'm pretty up to date, but for somehow I missed it. And the trailer came out, I saw it, I'm like, holy, this looks amazing, right? And then I found out there was a book, and then I became completely hooked to just waiting for this movie. Another trailer came out, another trailer came out. I mean, I was like really, really anticipating. And it's really rare when you anticipate something because your expectations go through the roof that you end up watching something and liking it more than you expected you will. For me, I think it was one of the best, I shouldn't say one of the, it was probably the best movie DreamWorks has ever done, animation movie. Beyond Shrek, beyond How to Train Your Dragon, because of the story and the time, and it had this, combination of E.T., Iron Giant, Bambi, and all those classics that, we grew up with, and all the animals in the kingdom, and how they're trying to sort of connect with this robot, and Ross is trying to connect with the animals. It has so much heart in it, so much heart. And for me, the third act didn't really bother me because, I mean, obviously, stakes are high and you need to have some sort of a conflict at the end as to what's going to happen. How is this, is she going to, decide to stay here or not? And they kind of established that throughout the film with the transmitter and all that. And I loved how it ended too because it sets it up for possible more stories. And I think there's three books, or there's going to be three books. So for me, it was a winner all the way. And if I think I saw the Wild Robot at TIFF, and I'm like, this is gonna, win the best animation at the Oscars. But then I saw Flow, And I was like, I think the Wild Robot is gonna have hard time unless Flow wins for best foreign film because kind of French, even though there's no dialogue, and the Wild Robot wins for best animated film. But amazing casting. I thought the casting was perfect. As you said, the score was amazing. And I can't say enough about it. Film. I also do tell people go not just watch it in theaters, watch it in IMAX. I saw it in IMAX, and it was just amazing experience. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah. I guess we should say a little bit about the cast that you alluded
Yes.
to. I mean, Lupita Nyong'o, who plays Roz, and if I didn't know she was voicing it, I don't think I'd have pinpointed her playing that role. She sounds very different to how she sounds in a lot of her live action films. A little bit similar, I guess, to the role of Maz Kanata that she played in the Star Wars
Mm.
movies, Force Awakens and so forth. Kind of, yeah, she's got this ability to really change her voice and just sound quite otherworldly, I suppose you could say. Yeah, I really liked her performance in it. And I don't know how familiar people in, on the other side of the pond, let's say, are with Matt Berry, who's a British actor. He plays in the film, he voices the really grouchy beaver called Paddler, if you remember that
Mm.
character.
Mm-hmm.
And Matt
Mm-hmm.
Berry is kind of like a king of voiceovers in the UK for a star. He's also got he had a very amusing a sitcom called Toast, where he plays this kind of resting actor. And it's a very surreal comedy. I highly recommend it. If you, I don't know if you can get it over there, but it was on
What is it
channel.
called?
It's called Toast, as in like
Toast.
toasting bread. But
Okay.
his character is called Stephen Toast, and it's a very strange film. Sorry, a very strange show. But yeah, Berry's known for that. He's known for various sort of singing exploits. Yeah, he's just very very funny, and he does a really good job here. Of course, Pedro Pascal. We haven't even
Mm.
mentioned Fink, who plays the fox that kind of
Yep.
helps Roz in this kind of quest for kind of raising Brightbill, the little goose. And it was, by the way, it was eat, swim, and fly. That was the instructions
Eat,
that
swim,
Roz.
and fly.
That was the instructions Roz is given to help little Brightbill, who's voiced by Kit Connor. But yeah, so you've got sort of helping them, this kind of conniving fox who really wants to eat to go against Fink's own nature, and obviously which would be to eat the baby goose. And that was quite an amusing dynamic. I thought that worked quite well as a kind of counterpoint to Roz's sort of sincerity. Um, and then you got another great British actor, Bill Nighy, comes in as Longneck, who's the kind of wise old goose that Brightbill ultimately teams up with when there's the migration, the ultimate migration that has to happen with all birds from such an island. So it is a lovely voice cast. I think they didn't go for sort of huge stars, although you could argue that Lupita and Pedro Pascal are pretty big, but yeah, it was a really nice card. I'm glad you mentioned the Iron Giant as well, because that was definitely a film that was in my mind when watching this. Had a similar sort of, well, obviously there's a robot in both, but uh had a similar atmosphere, I guess, similar tone. Um yeah, I feel like that's what they're going for. I mean, interesting you said Flow might beat it at the Oscars. I think probably the might of DreamWorks is, machinery
Marketing and
will,
yeah,
yeah. I mean,
yeah.
obviously I haven't seen Flow yet, but from what I've heard and from what you've just said, it does sound like a worthy winner. But you just imagine that the DreamWorks campaigning will probably push Wild Robot over the line. And to be honest, I don't think anyone could complain if it did win the Oscar, because it's a
It's a good
really
film.
good, yeah, it's a really
Yeah,
good
yeah,
piece of work. And
yeah.
as I said earlier, I think Chris Sanders is somewhat underrated in, compared to, say, Pete Docter, who, well deserves his reputation, being at Pixar and things he's done like Soul and, Inside Out. But yeah, Sanders is extremely inventive as as an animation director, and this is just such a, the kind of the observations of the natural world are so beautifully done in that first two thirds. that you could just sort of sit back and you don't really need to follow the plot. There isn't really that much of a plot as such. There is, of course, this sort of, as I was mentioning, this idea of parenthood and survival. I guess there's more themes than there are. The plot comes in the final third, like you said. There needs to be a little bit of conflict. I accept that, but I more enjoyed, let's say, wallowing in the natural world in that first. As I say, it is a bit like a nature documentary or something. There just happens to be a robot in the middle of it.
Imagine if somebody actually made a real documentary about that.
Yeah.
That's an actually pretty cool idea. But going back to the cast, there's Catherine O'Hara, who plays Pinktail. The family with the um, what's that animal called?
Is that the otters?
Is it
Uh,
the one with the kids?
yeah, I
Uh,
remember.
yeah. So she plays that. There's Mark Hamill who plays the bear, which I did not know. I mean, it was amazing to find that out afterwards when I saw the credit. I'm like, oh, Mark Hamill is in there. And Ving Rhames, I think he's in there for a little bit. But the amazing thing with the casting was not just, the lead, but everybody. Sometimes you actually can tell with the voices that that's the actor. Like in this case, I could not, and which was great. Because that doesn't distract you. Oh, that's, Luke Skywalker playing the bear, or, Catherine O'Hara playing a character. It was just a perfect film, and even the flow, like the way it begins. I'm just gonna give away one quick shot. It literally begins. The camera kind of goes through the clouds and the thunders, and it cuts to him being on the island. That's it. I mean, they could have done this whole sequence like Castaway, where Tom Hanks is in the plane and the crashes, and maybe they did, but it was just the flow was just so good because it just went boom, 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 but enough to be able to absorb all the emotions and the characters. And I thought that, like you said, sorry, excuse me, the Fox character, which was played by Pedro Pascal Fink, was such an amazing choice of a animal because foxes are known to be clever, right? And you have this robot who's trying to understand, forget about, you know, just human emotion and just the information she's trying to collect, and she encounters this character who's the cleverest animal in the kingdom, and then how his transformation happens. So I thought it was really brilliantly done. The direction, the voicing, everything was, and the animation was perfect for me. I know I'm very excited about this film, but it's an amazing film, and I can't tell. I can say to people, please go watch it with your family. It's an amazing, amazing experience.
Do you feel like, as I mentioned earlier, it is inspired by Miyazaki, the Studio Ghibli kind of maestro who's, did films like My Neighbor Totoro and Spirited Away?
Yeah, I think so. There are some elements in there, and I mean, there's obviously it's a computer animation, but if you look at the actual background, that was kind of similar in Puss in Boots too. There's a lot of now new, a mixture of like oil painting, if I'm using the right words, right lingo, with computer animation. It just looks very authentic, and I think this idea of computer animation period has sort of become now a day of the something of the past because people are not really responding to it that much because it just looks like AI now. Everything looks so authentically, computerly digitized. And I think the audience wants that traditional elements in there, which is in, and definitely it does have all that ingredients from the Japanese studio for
Could
sure.
you could you
Miyazaki.
see Wild Robot getting a nomination for Best Picture, not just in the animation category?
I actually said that to somebody after the film. I said, you know what? It's gonna get nomination for Best Picture, and if it gets nomination for Best Picture and Best Animation, then it's gonna win the Best Animation for sure.
Yes,
Right?
I would think so. But then it's almost a shame because then voters will go, well, we're not going to give it Best Picture, but we will give it
Yeah.
something. I mean, it's still
Well,
great for the film, of course, but
yeah, but I think this was needed because as of late, um, like Inside Out 2 was pretty good. I really enjoyed it. After a while, Pixar had a good film after 4 or 5 years, for me at least. And DreamWorks kind of was doing hits and misses in two. So this was really good to see, and I really hope that this restarts this idea. At the core of it, honestly, it's like, we get all excited about music and everything and visual. At the core of it, was a story, which goes beyond a lot of time we ignore it, but that's the reason we connect to it. And they spend a lot of time developing that and making sure that it works.
How do you think uh, young children will respond to it? Do you think there's enough for them, or is it more of a an adult skewed animation?
No, I think it's gonna appeal to everybody. I feel, I mean, forget about the animation for kids. It's just those kids. There's so much humor in there, like not like just unnecessary humor. It just comes in very quickly and goes away. And kids might not understand some of the humor. It's pretty dark, but they will still find it funny. And also the families that are going to come and watch it, they're going to relate to it. I think it's there's nothing in that film that is to me is not family oriented
Mm.
considering what's out there nowadays. If it had come 25 years ago, maybe you could argue that, but I think kids, they're open to social media all the time and phones, so I feel it's gonna hit a nerve, and I don't think it's gonna open up with a massive box office, but I think it's gonna have long legs continuing for the next couple of
I
years.
kind of felt there was something almost biblical about it, like a Noah's Ark style story.
Yeah,
In the second half, I can't give too much away. We don't want to give
yeah,
too much of the story away, but let's just say when the island falls into winter season and Roz has to
yep.
expand. I'm never quite sure to call Roz like female because Roz to me is a female name or it like a I don't know what are we going for, it or she or
I
he
think
for
it's I think it's a she from what I've sort of been talking to. Everybody's referring to she, so I would like
okay.
to keep it to she.
We'll go with she then. Yeah. So and also I did say earlier there's a certain maternal quality to Roz anyway. But yeah, in that second half, Roz does help a number of the island creatures, and that to me had a certain Noah's Ark quality. Whether that was intended, I don't know, but that's kind of how I read it.
Yeah, no, there was, one of the films that I sort of referenced it to more than any other film, which I didn't really talk about other than I mentioned it once. Yes, there was Iron Giant. Yes, there was, E.T. and all that. But to me, it was very much like Bambi. If you remember the way Bambi unfolded in the last act, there were a lot of similar elements. I'm not trying to say that they took it from there, but I just even like one of the deers in there looks like Bambi. There's a couple of shots when a deer kind of comes into that sanctuary that they have in the winter, and you feel like it was like a little homage to Bambi. I just felt it was very much at the heart of it. It had that Bambi feel to it, the relationships and the dark elements that come in later in the film.
Well, yeah, Bambi
Um,
is a film full of danger, I suppose,
yeah.
of the natural world, and that's exactly what this film shows. At least until that final third, where it goes a little too sci-fi for me, anyway. But
Yeah.
I still thought there were some great sequences in that final third. I mean, the kind of the field full of robots, for example, that was kind of a cool image. There were lots of cool images. I think I just was so enchanted by the first two thirds, as I said earlier, kind of wallowing in this kind of observational natural world style documentary almost that a bit like you with Flow, where you were like, I want this to carry on in the way I
Mm.
want it to carry on, and in your case for Flow, it did, i.e., it carried on without dialogue. I think in my case, I was wanting more of that first two thirds, but you know, it's a Hollywood animation in the end. It's always going to go a little bigger at some point, I guess.
I think I can see now that you mentioned it again, I can see how that transition from that world to another world may have thrown you off, because that world does come out of nowhere. Um, I remember now watching it, maybe I felt a little bit awkward for like few seconds and I just kind of dived right back into it. But I can see that, and I think this if they make a second one, they can probably do that a little bit less. But then again, the way the story ended, I think it's probably going to be way more than this one. We'll see how it goes, but I can see it. I can see what you're trying to say, and it makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah, it'd be interesting if they do adapt other books. I mean, it's always the way, and then the originality that you feel here won't be quite the same again. But it was for someone like me who knew nothing about it. And I'm not a huge animation fan. I won't rush out to see everything,
Yeah,
but this was a pleasant surprise. It was, okay, this is different. It felt different. It felt fresh. It felt, even though there are certain elements like you mentioned, whether it's Bambi or Miyazaki or E.T. or the Iron Giant, you can pick all of those influences, but it still felt fresh and
it did.
different. And yeah, I think you're right. I do think families overall will respond to it. Young kids will, perhaps again because there isn't too much dialogue or too much plot to cope with, and there are images to process rather than narrative developments. I don't know. Do you think we're going to see a line of Wild Robot toys? Are we going to go down that avenue?
Oh, I think so. I think it's gonna create a cultural impact because it's just again, I know I sound like a broken record whenever I talk to anybody on this podcast. It's like you have to have great characters to have great story, and to have a great film, you have to have a great story. And this film has all of them. The characters, the voices. I mean, I can see, little plushy toys with the voices coming out like when you squeeze them. It certainly has all that. I mean, people who doesn't love animals, right? So, and then now we're living in an age of AI, where
Well, that's
robots
true.
are
I mean,
being,
that's a very pertinent topic given
yeah.
how big that topic's become and Roz's kind of development as a character. But here, I suppose, showing you that AI isn't so bad. AI can be good, at least in the eyes of the filmmakers and the author.
Yeah, and what's funny is because when I was watching it, and again, I don't want to give it away, there's this transition of the character, right? And I think you know what I'm trying to get at. About 2 months ago, in the technology world, ChatGPT came out with a new version. And I've seen a lot of videos. I haven't tried it because it's just one of those things. It's like, do I really even want to try it? Where you actually have ChatGPT on your phone and you're talking to it, him or her, whatever it is. And the way he or she would respond would almost sound like a human being. Like he or she will giggle and respond and give an idea. Oh, I can relate to that. And I think that if I had, I felt that in Wild Robot, but obviously not in a way of possible endangerment or anything to human species, but more so, oh, we are getting there. We're already there, I think, to a certain level, right?
Yeah,
Imagine, I mean, if you see videos about in China and Japan, there's like all these human-like looking robots who walk around and serve you food. I mean, they walk very kind of like robots, but imagine in about 2, 3 years, how much you would be able to tell apart. So it's a perfect movie for a perfect time, and I think they're gonna do sequels for sure because this topic is not going anywhere.
that's very true. Very true. Well, we will see how it does at the box office.
Yes, awesome. Well, looking forward to that. And the Wild Robot comes out on September 27th, I think, in North America. I'm not sure what the date in the UK is,
I think it's in
but
October in the UK.
is it
So
in October?
yeah,
But yeah, awesome, man. Listen, as usual, thank you so much.
pleasure.
This has been great. Do watch Flow when you do. I would love to have a chat with you about that.
We should do that definitely.
And Unstoppable is really good. It comes out in December. Produced by Matt Damon and Ben Affleck with Jennifer Lopez.
Yeah,
Saturday Night. That's an amazing movie.
right.
I'm just telling you all the stuff.
No, someone was telling me about Saturday Night Only yesterday. So I haven't seen it yet, but someone said The Order is very good. That was in Venice, but I missed it with Jude Law. That's supposed to be
Oh,
very good.
right. I read the premise. I didn't get to see it because there's so many, as you know, in festivals, there's so many conflicts of times.
Mm,
But yeah, so there's some good stuff coming. Looking forward to chatting with you about them.
indeed. Excellent. Take care.
Take care. Get some rest, man.
Bye now.